Everyone ready for the Women in Africa panel? Yes, that's the spirit. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We're really delighted to welcome this great panel here. By show of hand, how many of you are familiar with the African Women's Decade? No? All right, well, so broadly speaking, the African 2010 to 2020 is recognized and dedicated by the United Nations and African Union as the African Women's Decade. And mostly it's about empowering women and advancing gender equality. And it is in that same spirit that we're launching for the first time the Women in Africa panel as part of the Africa Business Conference. So we're really excited and thank our great panelists for joining us. Claude has done a great job introducing Professor Suri, so I won't say much. She is an associate professor of applied economics here at MIT Sloan and has done significant work in Rwanda, Kenya, Sierra Leone. And please join me in welcoming the panel and Professor Suri as moderator.
Thanks, Khadija. Can I ask someone to grab the door at the back just to keep noise out since we've started? So welcome to MIT, everybody. I guess I'm an official MITer, so I get to say that, even though our dean gave a great welcome this morning. I'm going to just announce our panelists. We've got 5 amazing women on stage today, and so I'm going to let them take over the conversation. But very quickly, I'll start from that end over there. We have Marianne Nyangi, who's the head of women banking at Chase Bank Kenya Limited. We have Saran Jones, who's the founder and executive director of Face Africa. We have Agatha Amata, who's the CEO of Inside Out Media Limited from Nigeria. We have Ruth Kenosai, also from Nigeria, who's the sectional head, Lower Primary Corona Schools, Lekki. And then also from my hometown, Anna Othoro, who's the county executive member, Trade, Industrialization, Corporate Development, and Tourism. Kind of a mouthful there. From the Nairobi County government. So can we give a warm welcome to these women for joining us today? I'm going to ask each of them to just say a bit about what they do so that you can hear them say it instead of me, which is far more fun. So maybe, Marianne, you can start us off.
Okay. Good afternoon, people. Good afternoon. My name is Marianne. I come from Kenya. I work for a medium-tier bank, growing into top-tier bank. And I head the women banking department. And our primary mandate, of course, is to establish the Chase Women offering into the market and get as many women as possible into the bank and, of course, offer solutions to the women. Yes.
Thank you. Saran?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Saran Kaba-Jones. I run Face Africa, which began as Fund a Child's Education, but it's now an organization that's focused on delivering access to clean and safe drinking water and sanitation facilities to rural communities in Liberia.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Agatha Amata. I am the CEO of Inside Out Media. First of all, I host the longest running talk show in Nigeria. We've been on air for over 17 years, and we show across 22 television stations in Nigeria. I also show in the UK. Then I have a TV channel called Rave TV. I have an NGO, which is primarily targeted towards women, especially widows. And I have a passion for young people. I also have an orthopedic care center. That I don't know anything about. That was just something I did in a fit of craziness. My mom had an experience where she lost her arm, and I found out we didn't have the facilities in Nigeria, and we ended up in Germany, and I was at Ottobock, and by the time I left there, I was convinced to set up a center in Nigeria. We have started operations. I took 6 young people for training to Germany to start out the center, and I am pleased to say we started 2 months ago with over 117 patients on our waiting list. I also will be kicking off a radio station very soon, so I do quite a lot of things. But like I said, I am passionate about women and young people because I believe that these two are the endangered species as far as Nigeria is concerned. Thank you.
Thanks. Ruth.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ruth Kenosai. I work with an organization called Corona Schools Trust Council, and I've been with them for about 15 years now. I'm passionate about what I do. I'm a teacher. What I do is I train, I mentor, I coach, I facilitate. I work with children, I work with teachers. I've tried to do all these years is to make people see that teaching is beyond the classroom. And I've been able to do that with the series of trainings I've had with children and with teachers. What I do now, I'm trying to see how I can change the teaching career in Nigeria, because people see us as laid back, as poor, and we don't have focus. So I started doing this job from when I was young, and I wasn't motivated by my parents to go into teaching. I had the choice of becoming a banker, working in an oil and gas firm, and what I'm doing now, I had to make a choice. I wasn't properly paid as a young teacher, so I had lots of challenges, but I had to stand up, and I told myself, this is the only thing I can do. I want to see lives change, I want to see transformation, and I do this with joy. I work with children, I plan my lessons, I work with teachers, I motivate, I encourage, and I will tell you, I will do this over and over again. Thank you.
Thanks. Anna.
My name is Anna Othoro. Based in Nairobi, Kenya. I don't know how many of you know that Kenya's gone through a new governance system. We had our new constitution brought into play in 2010, and with that came a new system of governance. So we have the national government and 47 county governments, the Nairobi City County being one of them. Nairobi is the capital city, and that's why we call it a city county. And in that, my mandate is specifically to look at trade, industrialization, and cooperative development and tourism, quite a mouthful. We have 10 actually sectors that we look at reporting into the governor of Nairobi. Now, one of the things that was interesting about my getting into the county governments is that, first of all, this is the first time. I'm one of 3 women who sit on the county executive committee, and this was part of something that was mandated by the Constitution of Kenya, which mandates that 30% of the seats in political office should go to women. So I'm quite lucky to be fortunate to be one of the first women to sit on that committee.
Thanks, Anna. So I'll start off with some specific questions for our panelists. As you can see, they're a very diverse group across almost every sector I can think of, and sort of, at the front leading edge of whatever they're doing. So let me start with Marianne. Marianne, you're the head of women banking at Chase, which I know you say mid-tier. I grew up in Nairobi. I think of it as top tier. So maybe that's that you should take that back home.
Yes.
We spent this morning in the investments panel, and there was a big discussion about access to finance. I was wondering if you could speak a bit about the things you're doing at Chase and the things that are happening that you see around you that are related to access to finance and how that affects women and women going into business in Africa.
Okay. In the Kenyan context, actually, before we started offering our women banking proposition, we talked to a few women, and a lot of the things that came out in terms of women and finance was access to finance in terms of being restrictive, the interest rates being too restrictive, as in too high. And then, of course, the bank not understanding that women don't have collateral or a lot of, tangible security like most men would have. And then number 3 was lack of business skills and being able to have the capacity to run a business professionally. So we did structure our offering around that to be able to help the women access credit easier. So in terms of our offering, our credit process is much more friendlier for women than it is for men. Women are able to guarantee each other and not bring in tangible security or even use a business stock that they have in their shops. And then we also are, Anna has mentioned that we have a new government, and the government is very serious about lending to women. So the government has a fund that is called the Women Enterprise Fund that is very accessible to the women. It's much lower in terms of the interests, about 8% compared to the 20% that the normal bank offers to the other people. So it enables women in Kenya to borrow easier, and that has been really a success story for the women. And then one of the key things that we're doing this year in Chase Woman and in Kenya in general is to empower the women entrepreneur, especially with skills on how to run their business. We must agree that women don't keep their records as well as men do. They don't have a succession plan for their businesses, especially in Kenya. So we're trying to really build up their capacity so that they're able to run their business professionally. If anything happens to them, the entity is able to move on further and bigger than them. And then also give them access to markets in terms of meeting other women who are doing the same thing they're doing or who have been successful more than they are. And so they're able to mentor each other and share best practices with each other, as well as also exposing them to the developed countries. We're trying to plan a trip to Turkey and China and hopefully to America eventually, so they can also meet suppliers who then will be able to break the barriers for them in terms of exporting things to Kenya and of course being able to run their business in a better way. Lastly, one of the things, again, that we're doing is having a Chase Entrepreneur. We're calling it the Entrepreneur of the Year, where we're having women together and then competing to win this big prize of a woman in influence in terms of if you're a woman in the corporate world, how are you running your job? How are you influencing others? How are you helping the needy, of course? And then if you're an entrepreneur, how are you running your business? How are you keeping your books? How has your business grown from one section to the other? So eventually, then we'll have a group of people and a pool of women meeting together and encouraging each other and competing for this huge prize. Yes, so those are the various initiatives we're doing for the women in Kenya.
Great,
Yes.
thanks, Marianne. Saran, she gave me this amazing stat over lunch, so I'm just going to start with that. She said women spend 40 million hours a year. Billion. Okay, so I even got it off by 1,000. I did write million, not billion, Saran. So 40 billion hours a year walking for water. Tell us more about what you're doing in the women and water space, Saran.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, Face Africa began as an education charity until I realized that one of the major impediments to education was a lack of access to safe drinking water. Children were not showing up to school for extended period of time because they were suffering from waterborne illnesses. And it's a huge global crisis that affects 800 million people, and 350 million of those people are in Africa. The World Bank estimates that waterborne illnesses kill more children under 5 than HIV/AIDS, malaria, and measles combined. And unsafe water doesn't only affect health, it also severely inhibits the economic potential of a country. Overall economic loss in Africa due to the lack of safe drinking water and access to basic sanitation is estimated at $28 billion a year. That's 5% of the entire continent's GDP. And women and girls obviously are most impacted by this crisis because the water issue is a woman's issue. Women are the one responsible for walking long distances every day to fetch water for the households, which means that they spend less time focusing on economic activity, on education, on childcare, and basically improving their lives and their families' lives. So we take this issue of water extremely seriously because we see it as a catalyst for true change and development. And the more we can empower women and girls with access to water, the more we can give them the opportunity to improve their lives and those of their communities.
Excellent, thanks, Saran. I'm going to go on to Agatha. Both our keynotes this morning, both this morning said, it is our time in Africa and our time is now. As you mentioned, you're in media and both in TV and about to go on radio. Yeah. It would be great if you could speak a bit about the role of women in media and where you see that.
Thank you. First of all, I think the first way to start this conversation will be the biggest problem that I see that women face. I don't think it's peculiar to Nigeria, I would say in Africa. The two major things are culture and religion. Our upbringing teaches us as women that we have to take the back seat. I mean, a lot of us here in this room who are Africans, who have brothers, when your mother is talking to you, she says to you, you need to be in the kitchen. The boys are trained to believe their job is to go out there and provide, and the women, that is the African upbringing. It's changing very quickly, and media has an important role to play. The second thing is religion. Both religions, Christianity, Islam, whichever one. I mean, as a Christian, they said the first thing you're told is you have to be submissive. Now, that term has been abused because submissiveness is not slavery. And so when you speak out against anything, the first thing they tell you is as a Christian woman, you need to be submissive. And because as a human being, especially as Africans, we're really religious, you don't want to offend God. I think that's the way to go. You don't want to offend God or be seen to be offending God. You keep quiet and you hold back a lot of things. Culture, in terms of, I'll use something like abuse. Your husband has just beaten the living daylights out of you, and you go to the police station and you're reporting that your husband beat you up. The policeman would look at you and say, what did you do to him? Don't you know you should shut up when a man is talking? You run your mouth and go home and settle. How dare you come and report your husband? Go home and settle it quietly. Don't let anybody hear your voice. That is the background in which the African woman grows. And so, from a very young age, you're not allowed to express yourself. You're made to believe that there's something wrong with you when you try to do that. And I thank God for the social media as well. The conventional media, the social media, because there's a lot coming out. I mean, who knew that in Nigeria people could walk up and report cases of rape? If you are raped, you keep quiet, because if you don't keep quiet, no man will ever marry you. You become the victim 2 times in a row. Everybody is going to condemn you for coming out to say you were raped or battered. If you're beaten up by a man, you did something wrong. It is never the man's fault. It is forever your marriage breaks up, you were a bad wife. If you were not a bad wife, the man, you would have kept your marriage. Your husband marries a second wife, you must have done something wrong. You were not satisfying him in some way. That is the reason why he went out. And so because we have grown up in this kind of environment where whatever happens, you have to carry it, I'm very thankful. I mean, Mrs. Alakija had said a lot today, because she's working with a lot of women. Widowhood. That I was saying to her that was one of, I mean, because I host a talk show, that was one of the biggest problems. I did an episode on widowhood titled The Will, where most African men, I'm not even going to say Nigerian, because, I mean, the mails I got showed me that this happens across board. Their next of kin are their brothers, never their wives. So something happens to the man who expects he's going to live to be 100 years old, and he dies at 40. And he has left 4 children, a wife who he has told not to work. I want you to take care of my children. And then the brother takes over everything. A situation where women are considered property to be inherited, along with the chairs and the tables and the cars. That is what you find. But like I said, thank God for the media, and that is why I'm a bit passionate about all of these things, because the media has helped to highlight a lot of these things. The social media has caused a slight revolution of some sort, because someone can go on the social network and just put her story out there if she feels she's not going to be listened to, and it gives her an instant voice. And when she does that, the other more traditional forms of media take it over. I mean, I've worked on panels where we advocate. I work with quite a few NGOs as well who support women's groups. Project Alert, there's Lagos State Government, which is where I live, is doing a lot in terms of providing public defense for victims who cannot afford legal representation. Now, what this has done is that it has made a lot of women a lot more vocal and able to have a voice. in an environment which normally they would not get heard or listened to. And women, I'm hoping it's changing, but we still have it as a problem. Women need to support women. Women need to be women's keepers. You know, a man told me this. He said, you know what? When guys go out on Friday night and and you know, you guys think, well, yeah, we're drinking, but we're strategizing. And what we're doing is we're saying we need that man to get to that position, because when he's there, he's going to have our backs. Do you women do that? Why are you complaining? When you sit together, do you advocate to get women into positions where they can make a difference? Do you advocate to get laws that back you guys up the way we men stick for each other? If you don't do it, no one is going to do it for you. And so I think moving forward, we need to start to train a new generation of women. And media, for me, is the best place to reach a lot of people at the same time. We need to encourage women to come out, to speak out, to become their own best friends, as opposed to what we find today. A lot of the time, when you see a woman in power or has obtained or has reached somewhere, I am so glad that Mrs. Alakija is here, because she's one of the very few. You don't see that she's respected. There's always some insinuation, like she doesn't have a brain. And either she slept her way, or she's never giving her due credit. And so for me, this is an opportunity. I mean, if we do an each one tell one, for women to become women's advocates, if we want the laws to change, women have to be there. You have to advocate for those laws to be changed. You want to make a difference, it's the same thing. So I think going forward, we need to organize groups. We need to bring women together, female women banking, funding for women, for small businesses, and all of that.
Great, thanks. Let me move on to Ruth very quickly. Ruth has been working in education for a while. You know, we hear this quite a lot in Africa, that teachers are not paid well, they don't show up to school. Can you talk a bit about your work in education and motivating teachers to be passionate about teaching girls? Yeah.
Oh, wow. Like I said initially, when I decided to become a teacher, it wasn't popular. A lot of my friends felt I was a fool and I didn't know what I was doing. I had so much to offer. You know, way back home, we have bills to pay. And when you think of bills, you want to go for a job that will give you that. You won't get satisfaction of what you're doing, but you just want to pay your bills. I told myself, I said, it's a noble profession. And it comes from the inside. And it's when you're passionate about what you do, you take out time to plan your lessons. And when you're planning your lessons, you think of every child in your class. You think of Tony that is struggling. You think of Rita that has low self-esteem. You know, everything you do, your lesson, you plan them around your children. So a lot of teachers don't have this, they don't have good orientation. I work in a place where I was given a very good orientation, Coronal Schools. We've been there for over 50 years now. I told myself, I had to carve a niche for myself. I said, whatever I do, I'll put in my best. So I think what we need to do is sit our teachers down. That's what I intend doing. Have a training school where I would let them see the importance of driving whatever you do with passion. Because if you're not passionate about what you do, you can't do it well. You can't give what you don't have. I supervise teachers. I tell them, I said, you don't just enter your classroom without preparing. You read. You try and be creative with whatever you do. Children where I work, they had problems with writing, creative writing. There's a problem in Nigeria. I had to sit down. I said, okay, how do I help teachers teach this subject properly? I had to devise what we call rubrics. You don't just throw a topic at the child and say, okay, tell me about your birthday. That's what we do as teachers. We're lazy, we're laid back. We don't plan it. So I want to have a center where I can tell them, you think of the children in your class, you have what we call differentiation. Every child has abilities. You have the high ability children, we have the one in middle class, and we have the one that is still struggling. So when you're planning all this, you have to let them know that this, you don't just pick up the white marker and start teaching. It's a process, you plan it. And as you teach, you take them through the stages. And there's what we call, there's something we teach in my school now, IPC, International Primary Curriculum, where we try to develop the skills of our children. You imbibe this. So I will give this to the teachers, because if you are not motivated, if you don't have skills, you can't give it to the children. You have to go inward and discover the potentials God has given to you. I know that I can teach creative writing properly. I know I can mentor. I know I can coach. I know I can train. I can facilitate. I can teach creative writing. I can make children write their own stories. I can bring up the creative abilities in children. And I can put this in the teachers that I supervise. So if I have a center and you have a new mindset, okay, I'm working, not because of what I'm going to gain, because of I'm going to put a smile in a child's face, that's enough motivation. There's this popular thing, they say the teacher's reward is in heaven. Your reward is here right now. When you see a child bloom, that's your reward. A lot of children I've taught all my years in school, they come to me, Mr. Sai, I'm doing this right now, and that's the joy I get from it. So what I've gained all these years, I'll go back and put it back in these teachers. When you raise generation of teachers that know that I have to make changes in my country, Nigeria, change their mindset about the profession. People feel, you don't have what to do, that's why you're teaching. I love what I do, and I will not trade it for anything. Because when I see a child bloom, when I put a smile in a child's face, that's my satisfaction. I think if I can give back to teachers, they will value what they do. That's my target. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. Anna, you seem to be our lone government representative here, so let me bring it back to policy and government. What do you think is the role of government in enhancing opportunities for women in Africa? Or have you seen a role for that in your position in the Nairobi County Council?
I guess I can answer that question from the point of view of my Kenyan experience. When I listen to everybody speaking here, what happens in Nigeria is very similar to what happens in Kenya. And it reached a point whereby a lot of the activists, women activists, were saying, we need to start to fight. And one of the things they did is to actually write it into the Constitution. So our Constitution states very clearly that 30% of all government jobs should go to women. But we still find situations whereby the people in power or the leadership is trying to circumvent that from happening. And what we're looking at is, we're looking at it from the government perspective, but we also have to look at it also from the private sector. Actually, my background is private sector. That's where I started off my career. And in the private sector, I found it very difficult to move up the ladder, because you're competing with men. And when it gets to the boardroom and you get in there, you'd find that more often than not, your male counterpart will get looked at a lot more favorably than you would. So from a very early start, one of the things that I decided to do, and I'm doing it even right now as I'm in government, is that, you know what, when it comes to business, there's no man or woman, they're people. And when we're going out there to work together and to make sure that your company succeeds, you're doing it as people working as a team. And so that is what pushed me to where I am right now. And now that I sit in government, and I am very cognizant of the fact that I came in because of that 30% rule, yeah, because I'm one of 3 women sitting on the county executive committee. But the role that I'm holding is not a woman's role. It's a role that anybody can do, whether it's a man or a woman. And at the end of the day, we have to sit there and make sure that we are a good example. Because obviously everybody's looking, and when I listen to Agatha talking, yes, the men will actually look and say, you see, we told you they couldn't make it. So more often than not, we're working that much harder to make sure that it will happen. Now, in terms of legislation in my area of work, we're looking at legislation from the point of view of women in business as well. We have challenges in that, because a lot of what's been ingrained in our minds from when we were growing up was all about, you know, you can get to a certain level in terms of business and in terms of doing well, and such that we find some women, especially in the rural areas, will not move beyond what they've been told. And that's in the rural areas. But if you come into the urbanized part of Kenya, we're competing as aggressively with the men. And everything has to do with education as well. What are they being taught in schools? What are the positions that they're taking in schools? So when it comes to setting up legislations, it's saying you do have the right to go out there and to make it as a woman. We will help you, but we're also hoping that the women will take their place in society and will begin to work hard. So when it comes to procurement, we've got 30% of all procurement being designated for women within Kenya, so that you can go out there and win these government tenders as well. Because previously you never even, and I looked at it and I've talked to women over and over, and one of the things I'm noticing is that women are not even stepping forward. We've put that 30% to their advantage, but many of them are not taking it up. And so in government, we are talking a lot more about it. The funding is there for you if you will come and take it up. Understand what you need to do to get that tender. Because I've seen a lot of tenders, and when we look at the women-led companies that are applying for tenders, they're not applying for them in the right way. So we're beginning to educate. These are the things as a bare minimum that you need to do to get access to these tenders, so that we can push them in. So even though we are segmenting 30% for them, if they're not applying for them in the right way, then it becomes an issue. So as government, we're trying hard to educate, and we're retraining over and over. We're looking at working with the women in business associations within Kenya, so that we are starting very early to talk to young women straight from university, getting into jobs, about what they need to do to get the access, and what they need to do to grow their businesses. And I listened to Madame talking this morning, and I said, you know, if we just had, I think, her multiplied by 20 times in Kenya, a lot would be different. Because when I look at what she's been able to achieve, I think I can count on my hand like this in Kenya, women who've been able to achieve that amount of success that she's achieved, and she's a serial entrepreneur. And I think the reason that is so is because in our minds we've been ingrained with the fact that we're homemakers more than we are businesswomen. So we need to change that attitude, and that's what we're doing as government. So whenever I go out, and I'm speaking a lot to women, and we're also creating funds for women specifically, SMEs, to take advantage of. That's what we're talking about. Step out of that fear that I can't do well, and get into those business areas that would be able to grow you, yeah, rather than keeping yourself, and as she said, sorry, but in Kenya, teachers are mostly women, right? Men will teach up until a certain point, and then they'll drop off because then they have to go into business. So we're also telling women, yes, you can become teachers, but there's so many other professions that are there that are open to you to get. So go after them. And so for us, the legislation will be put into place. That's part of my responsibility, legislation. And we hope that we can put the right legislation so that women do get those opportunities.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. This leads me to my next question, which is going to put all of you on the spot. We have a bunch of very successful women here who clearly have already hinted at challenges they might have faced on the way to where they've gotten to. I'd like to ask each of you to talk about a challenge you've faced to get to where you are today, how you've overcome it, and hopefully you can leave our audience of young women with a piece of advice. Maybe we should start back at the beginning. Sorry, Marianne.
It's okay.
Let me start with you.
It is okay.
You knew I was coming back to you.
While I was listening to you introduce us, I thought, well, would I say I'm successful? I guess I'm on my way there. And I've overcome a lot of challenges, of course, along the way. And the key challenge, of course, for the corporate woman in Kenya is, just like Anna mentioned, getting to the top and fighting the boardroom wars is quite difficult. But I like what Madame said in the morning. She was very proud of God. For me, God has been a key pillar in my life since the time I was small. I mean, I was brought up, my father brought me up as a very confident person, got the same level of education like everybody else in the family, no favorism, everybody was equal to him. So I guess from a young age, it was engraved in me that anything a man can do, a woman can do. and actually can do better. Can do better. Yeah, and that has worked for me. I guess the bringing up and a good education also made me confident enough to know that I can compete equally. Even in the company that I work for, we're not, at the top, it's very scarcely populated with women, but we're getting there. And I believe with God by my side and with the guidance day by day, I will get to the top and to the very top. Yes.
Thanks, Marianne. Saran.
I think for me, as someone who's running a development agency, a nonprofit organization, it's not so much a challenge as much as it's an ongoing challenge, which is funding and support. I just want to mention that I strongly do believe that Africa can and should determine its own fate. And I think no time is better to do so than now, with all the narrative around Africa rising and the tremendous growth that the continent is experiencing. I think we're in an amazing position to take advantage of that growth and also invest and support local, grassroots, African-led organizations like ours, because I think we are in the best position to tackle some of the unique and really critical challenges that the continent and communities are facing, such as access to basic necessities like clean water and education and healthcare. And I think now is the time. So as we continue to talk about and celebrate the growth that we're experiencing on the continent, I think more emphasis should go towards local, grassroots, African-led organizations and the important and critical work that they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks. Agatha.
Two of the earlier keynote speakers had touched on what I consider the greatest challenges I've had. One is power. The fact that you have to become your own electricity generation company along with your business. That is the worst thing ever, especially when you're doing something that is media related. And so the amount of money I used to generate power for my business, I could use to do a lot of more sensible things. And when, I can't remember his name now, when he was speaking, he was saying, just fix the power and leave us and watch us fly.
Yeah.
That would be the biggest problem we have.
Yeah.
That's number one. The second thing, I think, is the fact that as a woman, you have men who have hang-ups. They would rather do business with men. And that's because they're not very straightforward as well. Because they know you would not compromise. I mean, it has cost me a lot. Because I say to them, there's no way I'm going to do that. And they'll tell you, if that's it, then we're not doing business with you. They want to cut deals with their guys, and it's things that are not ethical. And you put your foot down and say, I am not. They say, don't mind that, she's a woman. She doesn't understand. Once you're not ready to play ball, you become a woman. It means you don't know how to do business. I think those are the major challenges. The fact that you find men, and because in the environment in which you operate, there's so many men and very few women. And so you're like one lone person shouting in the dark. And so when you have your business, I'll just take a quick example. I run on about 22 TV stations in Nigeria. Now, we have a very weird system in Nigeria where you pay airtime to all the TV stations. And when I was going to start 17 years ago, the first thing I said is, I am not going to do that. You need to fill your airtime. You come to America, go to UK, go everywhere, and buy their programs, people who don't need the money. And then you say to me, I should come and pay you. That's not going to happen. I will only work with people who will partner with me. And everybody told me it will not be possible. And so I started showing my program outside the cities. I was doing very remote states. And then I had two or three stations where the CEOs believed in what I was doing. And that was how I started. And I sustained it. And I will tell you that 17 years on, I have never paid for airtime. My colleagues find it incredible. But those are some of the things that you will pay a price for standing for what you believe in. A huge prize. A lot of times, I mean, I know a lot of people whose programs have shut down and stuff like that. But I believe that if you stick with it, you'll face all these challenges. But there's nothing, absolutely nothing that you cannot overcome with passion.
Thanks. Ruth.
For me, I had to motivate myself as a teacher. I told myself, this is something I want to do, and I'll put everything, and I'll do it well. Which others, I'm sure other people don't do that. They get tired and they just get out of the profession. But I told myself, if it's something I want to do, I'll go out. Even if I'm not giving money to do it, I'll try and look for the money myself. I'll read books. Because in Nigeria, most times you don't have resources to work with. You have a topic you want to teach the children, and you will need relevant and appropriate resources. Corona, my school, they do a lot of, I would praise them anytime, any day. They've given me the right exposure and platform. But there are some other things I want to achieve myself. Because I don't have the right financial base, I can't do it. A lot of teachers go through that. You want to come to UK or America to come and see how they do things here, you're not allowed to do that. When I was sent to Exeter with other teachers to go on a study about 11 schools in the UK, about 11 of us went for that. I was picked. A lot of teachers will want to do that on their own, but they don't have money to do that. I was picked based on merits, on what I've done with children. That's why I said, whatever you're doing, do it well. Your work will always speak for you. We took our time to understudy the schools. We wanted to change the lesson delivery in my school, the way we teach science, core subjects, English, and math. We came back. We had to retrain teachers. It took us about 1 month. We kept going back and forth. It was like, telling them, recite this, do this. And, after less than a year, we were able to achieve that. And it was passion that drove us. Because we don't have the right people to work with. At the end of the day, a lot of people will not go with you. Because we have a vision in Corona. We want to bring up a total child that can stand anywhere in the world. We teach them key skills. And some of these schools in Nigeria don't have resources to work with. So what have I talked about? I said self-motivation, resources, money to go for training abroad, even to buy books. So you need to do a lot of reading. You need to know what's happening in other schools. And exchange programs. Go to other schools, visit them, and they will come over to your school to see how you do things here. There was a time my sister-in-law sent me letters from America. The children wrote stories about they asked us questions. Do we live on trees? Are we monkeys? Do we I'm telling you, exposure. I had to tell my children to write letters back to them, and we had to explain a lot of things to them. And it was passion that made me do that. That's what I'm saying. That if you don't have it, you can't do it. So if these teachers are not motivated well, if they're not trained, if they're not given resources to work with, you can't get the best from them. So those were the things I faced. Then power, internet facilities, because if you want to teach a certain subject, you want the children to see things for themselves. Because what they see, they retain. What you tell them, they forget. When a child can discover things for themselves, they tend to go back and give it back to you. But if you keep spoon-feeding these children, you won't get anything from them. We believe that we should allow these children own their learning. I told myself, I have to make myself the best in what I do. So I'm passing this across to all the women that are teachers. Whatever you do, put in your best and tell God to give you ideas. And that was what made me stand out. Thank you.
I think I'll draw my greatest challenge from my current role right now in government. And the fact that at the end of the day, there's this misconception that because we came in as part of a 30% rule that we cannot achieve. And so people are actually waiting for us to fail. And one of the things that obviously you're looking at is I had a sector within the county government that I have close to about 1,500 employees that report into my sector. When I looked at the split, it's possibly about 90% men. So you have a situation where you have men reporting into you who to your face will tell you, yes, boss. But you know the minute they've walked out that door, they're not going to get it done. So it's a lot of follow-up and a lot of being able to manage that whole cultural thinking from a perspective of, you and I are human beings. Let's start there. We're employed by the county government to deliver a service to the citizens of Nairobi. So we should do nothing less than that. And that challenge of being able to speak with them and get them to see a different way of doing business is big. Secondly, we have a 10% culture in Kenya. And I think it's in a lot of the African cultures that any contract going out, the said employee gets 10% as an under-the-table handout. So I do understand what you're talking about in terms of the fact of running a good, clean department. The department I took over handles all the licensing within the city. So you can imagine the number of 10% going under the table within my docket. We have a lot of leakage. We call it leakage in Nairobi because we're trying to be politically correct. It's actually stealing that happens right under our watch, whereby we don't even have systems. So I look at some of the students here at MIT and some of the things that they were talking about today, and I was like, you know what, come to Kenya, you'll find ways to get that technology to work. Because everything is manual. Why is it manual? Because that's the fastest way to steal, right? So those are the challenges that we're facing right now, being able to make sure that the monies that the citizens of Nairobi are paying into the county is coming into our coffers, right? And being able to even influence the same gentleman taking the 10, actually, in the case of some of it, it's even 50%. 50%, to me, 50% to the government. So the challenge there is to change that attitude and mindset that I need to take the money, right? That my salary is not enough. That at the end of the day, if I take this, and they basically spend it on actually real estate. That's the biggest thing. So it's the challenge of being able to tell the gentlemen and women working under you that there is a more honest way of earning a living, rather than dipping your hands into what does not belong to you. You're stealing. So that's been the challenge. That has been the challenge.
Great, thanks, Anna. I think we have some time for some questions from the audience, which I'm happy for some general questions. If you want to ask any particular person a question, that would be great. We can stand, there's 2 mics, if people don't know, that are in the room. So if you line up by the mics, we can get some questions in. Should we start here?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Sangudeli. First, thank you all so much. You guys are really an inspiration. My question is, as I look around this room, the fight for global equality in Africa cannot happen with half of the population not in the room. How do we engage? 2 questions. One is, how do we engage the other half that's not here? And what can young men like myself who are here, practically, what can we do to aid in this fight for global equality? Thank you.
Who wants to take that?
There's 2 questions there. Why don't we have 2 answers, whichever way you want to take it. Anna, you want to give it a shot?
Let me give it a shot, and
Yeah,
then
go on.
I'll hand it over to Agatha. I think the 2 things here. First things first, I think the reason that the other half is not in this room is that they don't see a problem, right? So that's the reason that they're not sitting here. And if they don't see a problem, then, how do you get them to work with you to address it? That's one of the issues. I do believe, and I think what happened in Kenya, and there's a flip side to that in Kenya that's now happening. There was a lot of education on the girl child. Educate the girl child, take her to school, empower her so that she can be able to, work towards empowering, because when you empower a woman, you empower the family. And that's the way that we would work towards equality in that regard. But I think more often than not, it's about being able to just work towards getting the other side to see, right? And that's why they're not here. They don't see it. And that, you might say that we are whining as ladies, but we're not. We're calling a spade and not a big spoon, right? And at the end of the day, we need to just say, this is what's happening, let's work together to sort this out. And it's about having those healthy conversations like we're having today.
Agatha, you want to add?
Yeah, well, I mean, she's basically said it, which is educating the girl child. But more than that, I also think that we should target the mothers. It's very important. The mothers are the one who instill the values into the children, both male. So when you target the woman, you have actually targeted the nation. She's the one who tells her son, go out there, and who tells her daughter, sit here. That is how the problem begins. And so, apart from educating the girl child, we need to start to talk to the women. In Africa, if somebody comes into your house, you're married, and he sees you washing clothes as a man, or cooking as a man, and you have a wife, the first thing he's going to say is, they must have done something to you. What did you marry her for? That mindset must change. The woman is not a slave. She's a partner. Even the Bible says so. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and finds favor. And that does not include slavery. Because I know women who have husbands who don't have a job, and their husbands cannot even bathe their children. They will get up in the morning, expect their wives to do all the work, and they're sitting down, get in the car, get the children to school before they go to work. Meanwhile, they're doing nothing.
Sarah, do you want to add to that?
Can I just add
Yeah,
to that?
please.
I think we need to start by leveling the playing field. Women simply are not starting at the same level as their male counterparts. And I do agree, it starts at home. In the clean water space, for example, if you have women and girls who spend 60% of their day walking to fetch water because of traditional gender roles, that's a problem. So if we can start by having a conversation around how can we reduce the amount of time that women and girls are spending to walk for water, and maybe having more boys sharing that responsibility, then we can start to have that conversation. But I definitely think it starts at home. It starts with not just the parents, but also the brothers, the husbands, the uncles. I think they have a role to play. And we can't have a conversation around gender equality without including men in that conversation.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take another question over there.
Thank you all so much for coming here to speak with us. My name is Jessica Conchu, and I am a graduate student at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And I also was the lead chair of the African Development Conference at Harvard. And so my question to you is one of leadership. You are all obviously very successful women, and women that many of us here aspire to. And I know that when we get to positions of leadership, we're not only going to have women reporting to us, but also men. And there's a difference in the means of communication between men and women in terms of what is socially acceptable. Now, I consider myself to be someone with a bit of a type A personality, and that might not always translate well in a room when you are leading men who may or be older than you, may have more experience than you, and you're in a position of leadership. I know that for men, there have been many courses and many classes on exactly how a man is supposed to talk to his subordinates, how he's supposed to present himself, how he's supposed to dress, and all of these things. But for women, it's a little bit more fluid. You know, some people say, oh, be kind, be quiet. Other people say, be firm. So there's a lot of these mixed messages, but I would like to know, in your experience, what has been effective in terms of actually achieving results when you are working in a position of leadership where you have both women and men reporting to you?
Thank you. All right. Anna spoke a bit of this, but so.
Okay.
Yeah, so let me ask Ruth or Marianne to pitch in.
Okay, I was formerly working in my VI branch, and before I was made a section head, I was a class teacher. And I was promoted, you know, and when they made me a sectional head, a lot of my teachers were not happy about it because they said, how can you make me so silent when I'm here? So I had to go back to, you know, think of ways to work with my colleagues because now I'm ahead of them. So it wasn't easy. And okay, what they do is they prepare lesson plans, they bring to me. Sometimes I might have to correct them. And you know, mainly go. They will say, but they'll tell me, Mrs. Osai, they just made you a sectional head. I don't know why you're doing this. And what I do is I just smile and I'm very firm. I'll say, please take it back and correct it. I'll smile, but I'm firm. I was a bit diplomatic because men, it's not easy to handle men if you're not firm. So I had to be, I had to sit back and think of ways to work with them. Even the women gave me hassles because, yes, they did. Some were my stream mates. We used to sit down, plan lessons together. Now they're coming to report to me. He wasn't funny. I had clashes. I won't say anything. I'll just keep quiet. But what I do, I'll make sure I will enforce it and I'll make sure the job is done. So you just have to think of a way to work with people. And so I was sent for a leadership training. My school had to send me to go and think of ways to work with my because what we do, if you have problems with your teachers, you will suggest to your boss and they'll tell you, okay, go for a training. That helped me a lot. I had to think of managing myself and managing others. So I had to be diplomatic. I had to be firm. And if I have to bend the rules, sometimes I'll do that. And I'll have to explain all the time why I'm doing this. And today, this is my, about 5 years now, we've been working well. So it's always like that. Initially, they won't want to take you seriously, but you have to now think of ways to make sure what you're saying, you follow. Even the children you teach in class, you do the same with them. Because you are a leader and they are following you. When I was in class, I'll tell them, let's have a meeting. We're going to make rules for the class. I'll tell them make rules and suggest penalties. We put the rules up and put penalties up. When they break my rules, they face the consequences. And I follow it through. Because children, they will study you. And if they find out that you're not someone that follows through with your punishment, they will take you for granted. So same applies to adults. You do the same.
I might ask Marianne to come in because we've only got about a minute left.
Okay.
So,
Well, when she was asking the question, I thought to myself, in my whole career, and this is my personal opinion, women reporting to you are harder to deal with than men reporting to you. Men, so long as you have your work ethic right, you lead from the front, you know what you're doing, they will always follow. Women are the biggest challenge, but again, emotional intelligence is key, and again, just knowing how to deal with a woman, yes.
does anybody else want to add to
I
that?
just wanted to say, one of the things I've learned is that as long as people know who you are, you must, I don't deal with people as male or female. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
My association, I'm the PRO, and that's because they always want me to talk. They know my stand on issues. I don't compromise. So if somebody says to you, Agatha did that, people who know me will say she couldn't have said that. And people who know me will say, yeah, that sounds like her. So when I deal with people, when I'm talking to you, you know exactly, it's nothing, I can scold or caution someone, and the next minute I'm laughing. But you see that thing, you've got to get it done. I really don't care who you are, just get it done. That's the bottom line.
Great. Thank you for that last word. I'm afraid we are out of time. Should I hand over to Claude? Or
Yes,
should I do it?
yes. Thank you so much,
Okay, I'm
Tabney.
going to hand it back to our MC, Claude.